The next person I'd like to introduce is Ryan Donnelly from Reef Restoration Foundation, and I believe Cameron's presenting with him too.
Hi, well, thanks for your attention. Today I'm going to run through Reef Restoration Foundation's Resilience and Recovery Program and try and unlock some of the potential that we think this program has for communities as we move forward through ever-changing times. But first, who are we? Reef Restoration Foundation often flies under the radar. We have restoration in our name, but in actual fact we've evolved from restoration and we play very much in the assisted recovery and adaptation game, like much of us at this conference does. Our shtick is very much around community. Community is where we have much of our labour, it's where we get all of our resources, and it's what gives us inspiration to do what we do. So our main game here today and with our Reef Resilience and Recovery Program is about how we create a model for replication that can be operated by communities. It's very important that this type of model is able to justify the outputs, justify the inputs with significant outputs. And so that's our main game. Most importantly, we don't outplant corals. We started in that direction, but part of our evolution was to move to spawning hubs, and we're trying to unlock some of the potential that we think that this brings to the world of community-based reef assistance. So one of the things that separates this program, I guess, from others is that it focuses on establishing a reef within the water column, away from some of the stresses that you have down on the reef with parasites, predators and competitors, where our learned experience is that things grow faster. And an important aspect of it is that the mobile nature of the nursery is that we can lower the whole assembly down into deeper, cooler water in times of thermal stress like we're experiencing now, and our results are there to see. I won't go into the model of the nursery because that's Cameron's shtick, but my next 3 slides, and my final 3 slides, will focus on the bottom point there. How do we create value? It's very much a case that we can look at each one of these subsequent 3 slides in isolation, but the true value is created when we look at them in tandem. And the only way that we can realise the potential of these in tandem is if we work in collaboration with others. It's often just a case of seeking advice, but working together is the critical part. So when I talk about communities, I'm talking about all communities. It's community groups, it's conservation groups, it could be clubs, it could be Indigenous ranger groups, or it could be regional NRM groups at any sort of scale. There's no real limit to that, and I often field expressions of interest from individuals every day, but also from different community groups up and down the coast of the Great Barrier Reef, and sometimes beyond on the west coast, but also out in the Pacific and parts of Asia that express an interest in how they can do this work with communities and to be able to make it replicable and manageable. So the only way that we can achieve that is to come up with a model that's based on sound scientific principles, but it can be managed by people who aren't necessarily scientists or even have a scientific background. So we've gone with simplicity, a few lessons that we've learned in our 7 years of operation, and we try and make that model as replicable and easily manageable as we possibly can. The second slide I talk about here is when we get targeted, how do we get the most bang for buck by targeting areas of the Great Barrier Reef that's going to make the most of the existing dispersal mechanisms, the conveyor belt of dispersal that we get from source reefs distributing larvae to the myriad sink reefs on the Great Barrier Reef. So the notion here is that we target community groups that are situated adjacent areas that are identified sink reefs, and this is where the collaboration comes in with scientists, with other groups like Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef that are identifying a network of source reefs, and then we can be highly targeted. So by the time you put the first 2 of these slides together, we're starting to create fairly substantial value. By the time we put the third one in to here, we were looking a little bit down the track, I suppose, but we've seen from the good people at the Australian Institute of Marine Science how through their part of the RAP program, they're looking at developing corals that have that are heat adapted. So the algal symbiont is chosen for its ability to survive and thrive in the ambient conditions of the future. But there's no real meaningful dispersal mechanism for the progeny of those corals. We're not there yet. But we propose that our spawning hub, nurseries, will be able to grow in the advantageous position in the water column, the progeny of the heat-adapted corals, and we can grow them to sexual maturity so that we can put the second generation of those heat-adapted corals out into the environment in their billions onto the existing conveyor belt of larval distribution through source reefs and operated cheaply and efficiently through community groups. So I'm going to hand over now to Cameron to show you how it all works. So thanks very much.
Like many others out there, we use coral fragments, so there's nothing new there. But we had been for a long time outplanting fragments and planting them deeper than 6 metres in clusters of 5, and that's because we wanted to concentrate on quality, not quantity. It was still time consuming, and with limited time underwater, how can we really measure the success? And with all of these outplants all over the reef, it's just not possible, especially with a small team. These are just some of the corals that we're working with on our trees. So we have, now that we're not outplanting, we have access to almost every type of coral. So what we did was we redesigned our program from the ground up to maximise the survival of our fragments to get them to spawning size as quick as possible. This way they can get to spawning size and reseed the reef every year from then onwards. This is about maintaining rugosity, coral diversity, and the structural complexity of a reef on a reef scale intervention to help maintain adaptive capacity. This single input, continuous output method is a low cost, low labour model that's easily scalable, requiring minimal effort once set up and leaves no trace if ever removed. So where we differ from the usual practice is that we only use just enough material to stock a single branch. We are building coral spawning forests, and every single branch on our trees is a separate genotype. And each of our trees holds 40 branches. We attach the fragments so when they grow, they fuse back together and onto the branch, and we call this fusion fragging. And this is a way to reform the coral into the shape that we want, which is the branch and as big a coral as possible in the shortest period of time. Now these corals will then join in with the rest of the great spawning event, adding hundreds of millions of genetically diverse corals onto their reef every single year thereafter. And then once all these corals spawn, our part is done, and we let nature do what it's designed to do and do best, and choose corals, let the corals choose where they grow and settle. Now, since we're not outplanting fragments anymore, we're now open to almost any type of coral on the reef. Slow growers, hard to attach, hard to find, grows in deep water, and even ones that grow upside down. We don't know what every coral's role is on a healthy reef, so why restrict which types of coral that we actually use? So we have all types: hard corals, thin plating corals, fragile, and boulder corals, meandering corals, encrusting, and even solitary species. But let's not forget the soft corals. Those are important corals too. And we also have non-photosynthetic corals on our trees. So when all of our 150 trees are stocked, we'll have 6,000 genotypes of coral, and this is huge genetic diversity. And all of them can be studied and monitored long term. So we looked at the security of our coral spawning forests and how to protect them. Our design allows them all to be quickly and easily lowered out of harm's way and safe depths. And after the recent cyclones, excessive rain, flooding, and now the devastating bleaching events underway, lowering the trees has already proven itself with no signs of stress and continued growth and fusion onto the branches. We've actually been continued to collect stock and attach them to the trees this whole time, and that's just a fantastic result. Now we have developed another major part to this project, and this is to do with the collaboration that Ryan was talking about. This is for the quick and easy, economical, mass deployment of ex situ settled coral larvae. Particularly with heat-adapted corals, to get them to spawning size as safely and quickly as possible for their own mass dispersal of spawn, all while being able to be easily studied and monitored the whole time. Side-by-side comparison of different species can also be done in the field with real-world conditions and at different depth ranges, plus a whole lot more. Competition for space, pests and predators, detritus buildup, cyclone damage, and wave exposure are pretty much now gone. And now we have the benefits of increased growth rates, maximum fertilization, and not having to worry about the environmental conditions of the reef below. And so how can we achieve this? We have developed our own coral larval settlement device. They are cheap, have a large surface area for settlement, and made from over 95% natural materials, held together with a common binder. These settlement devices can be stacked and easily packed for transport of settled larvae between the facility and the reef and directly to the trees. Once on a reef, these devices simply slid onto the tree branches, and this allows for the deployment of thousands of these devices quickly and economically. Once on the trees, they take advantage of the resort-style lifestyle up in the water column and the accelerated growth off the substrate. This allows them also to grow in all directions. So seriously, what else could you ask for? This was designed for direct collaboration with researchers, institutions, students, and more, to let you guys focus on what you do best, researching, spawning, and further advancing the science, and let us do what we do best, the no science bit, and getting your corals to spawning in the shortest possible time. Thank you.